This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Next on Big Story.
You okay?
Victims of an infectious disease who never recovered.
I was better within a couple of days, but he was not. And I said, well, maybe you're just tired, because bronchitis always hits him hard because he is asthmatic. I thought, well, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. Never got better.
Take this finger, touch your nose.
Exhibiting severe symptoms like brain fog.
Your eyes, squeeze my fingers.
I remember calling my wife. I have no idea where I am. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know where you are? I had no idea where I was.
A puzzling condition for which there is no cure.
I joke with my friends that this is like being an alcoholic. You take it one day at a time because you don't know how you're going to feel.
And little research for treatment.
And it got really bad at night, where it kept me up. A lot of times I was scared to go to sleep because, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna wake up.
Only the forgotten victims the pandemic left behind.
So that is, I think, is probably my biggest frustration, is people not understanding or choosing to understand that illnesses impact people differently. Even if there's a lot of unknown to it, there's still people that are struggling.
Coping with long COVID. Next on Big Story.
There is some growing concern and alarm about what's being called long COVID.
The CDC says more than 1 in 10 patients will develop long-term symptoms.
In 2020, just before the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the world, Patrick Malia worked 2 jobs. One of them was at a surgery center in Elgin, a city some 50 kilometers outside Chicago.
I worked 2 jobs, went to school, pulled straight A's, took care of the kids at night while my wife worked nights, usually 3 or 4 nights a week.
I do work at nights as a flight attendant, so he'd have no problems putting the kids to bed, getting them ready for school, taking them to school, and he'd have no problems doing any of it.
I worked in the hospital when Ebola was a big thing about 10 years ago. And we did all kinds of Ebola training and things like that. And I kind of thought it was going to be the same thing, where, okay, there's this new disease, this new virus, but it's probably going to be like Ebola, where it just fizzles out and doesn't actually materialize in anything. But I do remember telling my wife, if anybody's going to get it, it's going to be me, because it's a respiratory virus and I have asthma. So I'm like, I'm going to get it. I know I'm going to get it.
The number of coronavirus infections around the world now exceeds 230,000.
We must enact an immediate stay-at-home order for the state of Illinois.
It was the week of March 13th. Came home from work, was not feeling well. Woke up Saturday, started to feel worse. Got worse as the day went on. By Saturday afternoon, I was upstairs in bed under 3 blankets, shivering so hard the bed was shaking. So I went to the ER. By the time I got there, it was like 104-degree fever.
Eventually, Patrick was allowed to go home. He didn't leave the house for 38 days.
Stayed in the house, could not leave, could not walk more than 10 feet without collapsing, struggling to breathe, struggling to just with strength. The fatigue was brutal.
I was better within a couple of days, but he was not. And they said, well, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. It never got better.
Dr. Mark Sala of Chicago's Northwestern Medicine Hospital was on the front line as the pandemic swept through the city.
Things got very real, so to speak, in the United States, then we have inundation of all the hospital systems, especially the ICUs, with people with really very severe pneumonia and life-threatening critical illness from COVID-19. At that point, we got a sense that not only were things very acutely very, very difficult and that we were going to lose a lot of people to this, but that there would be quite a fallout from it in the coming years.
Patrick attempted to return to work on a part-time basis. He quickly realized the impacts of COVID-19 were more than physical.
Squeeze my fingers. Pull me in, strong. Push me away. Good.
There was a couple times that I drove to work, the same route I had taken for years. Remember calling my wife, I have no idea where I am. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know where you are? I had no idea where I was.
Was getting lost a lot of times when he was going to work. And he'd call me, and I'd have to ask him, where are you? Do you know, name things around you? And I'm not from the suburbs, so I don't 100% know, but I had to figure it out every time and make sure that he was okay.
I would get confused very easily. I would black out. I'd forget where I was. I'd forget what I was doing. I'd forget who I was talking to. And that's kind of when we started to notice that there were more like neuro symptoms along with the respiratory.
You okay? This is one of the first things you climbed when you were first starting at the park.
My son still worries that I'm going to die. It's been almost 3 years and he's still not entirely convinced that I'm not going to die.
My 6-year-old thinks that he's gonna die at any minute. When I do leave for work, he always asks, can I call you until your plane takes off? And it's like, you can call me at any time. He's afraid that when I do go to work that Daddy's gonna die and he's not gonna know what to do and he's gonna have to take care of everything.
No, because hey, the leaves are starting to grow.
So the most common types of symptoms tend to be fatigue, brain fog. A lot of people will complain about shortness of breath, chest pain. There also can be GI problems, rashes. There's no medication yet that sort of attacks the root of the problem, that attacks the upstream start of the disease.
The long-term health problems survivors could be facing. Some continue to experience symptoms for months after infection. Doctors are working to better understand how to help these so-called long haulers.
There are way too many things I love about Miami. Starting with the sky. The color of the sky it's got a beautiful hue. My name is Chris Almeida. I'm a tattoo artist locally here in Miami. I have a very busy life. I'm a single dad. I have 3 kids. I have a routine that I can integrate into my daily life. I wake up in the morning early, like at 6, and then I go for a 30-minute run. I don't really measure how far I'm running, but rather just make sure that I'm doing 30 minutes. It's not too hard on my body and I get my cardio in.
A tricky thing about long COVID is that it has a kaleidoscope of effects.
It was mild. It was mainly just one night where I had a lot of sweats, I had a fever. I was a little bit concerned because at the time, obviously, you know, there was the whole COVID craze. So I went and got tested, and that's when I got the results that I had COVID. Shortly after, I started feeling the arrhythmia in my heart. A few times a day, I would feel this like difference in heartbeat. I started becoming more and more concerned because it started getting progressively worse. It got to the point where like all day I could feel like random spatters in my heart. And it was almost impossible to go to sleep. And I was scared. I was scared because, holy shit. Holy shit, like am I gonna wake up tomorrow? Like, you know, it was a concern. It was scary. I decided to go to the doctor and get checked out. My doctor sent me to a cardiologist. When I went, they did several tests. They put me on a treadmill where I ran. They actually sent me some sort of device that I had to place on my chest to test my heart. The conclusion was that I was fine. There was no diagnosis of what I had, but the doctor simply advised me to start becoming a little bit more active. The most beautiful part about having become a tattoo artist is being able to get this like one-on-one moments with people, bro. These moments are so precious, and I've learned so much and I've grown so much from these people, man. You build these like very intimate relationships with people and you share information. It's such a wonderful gift, and I have been impacted by so many people.
That's the one thing I'm going to take from this for any future involvement with anything like this, is that everybody's immune system is completely different.
Yeah.
That's what really
Yeah, some people are more prone to it.
Correct.
I'm gonna get gas mask.
In case it drops another bomb.
Just in case, bro. I thought the whole mask situation was so ridiculous.
It was. Was throwing away his garbage in the garbage chute, right? No, he was in sandals, no socks, just a pair of shorts, no shirt, had a mask on.
That's funny.
He had a mask on. From his apartment door to the chute, he had to wear a mask.
Wow. That's crazy how like it's messed up people to that level, bro. Like that fear, and it goes to show you how much people are afraid of dying too.
Mm-hmm.
Arrhythmia feels like your heart is beating out of rhythm, basically. Because normally you don't feel your heart, you don't feel your lung. But when you feel arrhythmia, you actually feel your heart beating. And it feels like it's beating inconsistently or beating out of rhythm. And I also would feel sort of like a sensation extending out to my left arm from it. It wasn't a pain, it was like I could feel like my nerves feeling the arrhythmia. And it got really bad at night. It would happen all through the day, but it was really bad at night, where like it kept me up a lot of the times. A lot of times I was scared to go to sleep because, you know, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna wake up. You know, obviously there are processes in the body that are going on that we're not aware of, and God knows what's going on inside, right? But I think what was mostly affected was just my state of mind. You know, I was constantly concerned with this issue because it never felt like pain. It just feels like just a new sensation in your body, you know? When you have arrhythmia or you have some sort of symptom or a concern for your health, you're concerned for the future, right? And that's what causes anxiety. ¿Ya abrió eso de abajo ya, primo? ¿Ya abrió eso de abajo ya?
¿Qué?
Mexicano.
Muy por pescadero.
There was a big controversy when the vaccines were coming out, and there was a lot of back and forth between different groups of people that believed the vaccines were harmful, other people believed the vaccines were necessary. I was very neutral to it, but well, I guess I wasn't neutral to it because I didn't get vaccinated. But no, I don't plan on being vaccinated. You didn't get vaccinated either, right?
Actually, I did.
You did? No way. I just, a lot of people got vaccinated and they still got sick.
I think the most important question is what differentiates people who get long COVID versus people who don't? Was it a genetic factor? Is it gender? And then the other biggest question is how can we break this cycle of inflammation or break this cycle of an autoimmune disease? For people who currently have long COVID, there's hope on a number of different levels. One is the fact that we are investing so much into trying to find out about long COVID. So I'm relatively optimistic that in the next year or two, we might have better treatments for them.
The national COVID emergency declaration officially ends tomorrow, but some people who contracted the virus are still suffering years later.
Even for patients who fell ill well into the pandemic, many questions remained unanswered.
How can you get tired of walking 10 feet? Been active all your life, and now you're telling me you cannot walk 10 feet? You tell them I have long COVID, and they're like, oh my God, are you okay? And the fact that you don't know when are you going to feel better? Am I recovering, or? It's very, very frustrating. When I got out of COVID, I had about 2 weeks that I felt good. January 10th was when I couldn't get to work. I was extremely weak. I couldn't walk from the bed to the bathroom. I went back to work on a Monday, and I came home early, and the next day I was like, this is not normal. I should be feeling better by now. And then I went back to the hospital a couple of weeks later, and that's when they told me, you have long COVID. Yes. My reaction was, okay, so now what? What's the treatment? How long is this gonna go? And there's no answers. So that part was very frustrating, because the answer is, we don't know. We don't know if it's gonna last a day or a year, and there's no treatment. Basically, you just have to deal with it. Things that you take for granted, like walking and taking a dog to walk in the park, and cooking, and taking a bath, taking a shower. Taking a shower is exhausting. So it's very, very frustrating, because you don't realize how much energy it takes to do the basic things during the day. This is one of the few things that I can still do, is make the coffee in the mornings. During the day, I can make some coffee. As the day goes, energy goes down. That's why a cup of coffee kind of like gives me a little boost. Shh. Thank you. We used to walk to the grocery store with Toby, and that was part of our walk. And now, if I want to go to the grocery store, I have to drive. So that's some of the things that have changed. When you have to spend so much time laying down after being somewhat an active person, it's very debilitating. It's very frustrating. It's a roller coaster. You have some days that you feel better, and then the next day you spend it in bed all day. I was talking to my husband the other day, and you have to be tired. You have to be tired of doing everything around the house because I cannot do anything. All I do is order food because I cannot even cook. You feel guilty because he's walking around the house cleaning and everything and you're just laying in the bed. The frustration sometimes it builds a lot.
One challenge with long COVID, as well as with all the post-viral conditions, is people tend not to believe the patients. They think they're malingering, they're making this up, they're being lazy, and because there's not a specific test, you have to rule out everything else, make sure it's not all these other things. And then once you've done that, you can say it's long COVID.
20 million Americans dealing with lingering symptoms of COVID-19, known as long haulers. Many are not sure if that's what they're truly suffering from.
Back in Chicago, Laura Carangella is a mom of two who works as a school counselor.
I would say I'm a pretty social person. I really enjoy practicing yoga, baking, gardening, spending time with my family, especially my two little girls. Work ethic, very hardworking, focus on always doing better, giving back to the community, that type of thing. I have a lot of family in Italy, and so in Europe, a lot of things were happening before I was coming to America. So I remember telling friends and colleagues that this virus or whatever is happening is gonna come our way, and nobody believed me. Prior to me getting it, my husband was sick, got COVID, and that was when everything kind of really started panicking a little bit because he does have a heart condition. But then as my oldest daughter got COVID a week later, then I started panicking because I felt like, okay, now are we all gonna get sick? I think it was the day before New Year's Eve, I got sick. It was scary. I had the worst body aches, fevers. I felt sick in ways I've never felt before, and it was all like in the upper respiratory. I had trouble walking up my flight of stairs without being extremely exhausted and winded, taking breaks, just walking up the stairs. One thing that hit me the most was I was making our beds, and I couldn't make our beds. This is almost like 3-4 weeks after being, diagnosed with the COVID. One feeling I had a lot, and still to this day, is like hopeless. Because you're doing everything possible they're telling you to do. Taking the medication, you're resting. I was sleeping 12 hours a night and napping. I literally felt like I was sleeping 24 hours. No matter what I did, nothing seemed to help.
As the epidemic spread like wildfire, Chicago's Northwestern Hospital opened a comprehensive COVID-19 center. A key focus centered on post-COVID conditions, known as long COVID.
Symptoms include essentially everything from having fatigue, post-exertional malaise, meaning they exercise or try to get back to normal activities and then feel very wiped out. Brain fog is a very frequent symptom, inability to kind of keep their attention. And then you have other manifestations in other organ systems, such as chest discomfort, which sometimes is due to heart issues, palpitations, fluctuating blood pressure, so a large array of things.
Down. Keep your fingers straight. Push up.
In the context of all the commotion regarding people in the ICU, in the hospital setting, people getting a lot of lung damage and all this commotion, then we have, on the other side of things, people coming in the outpatient setting as well. And so these are individuals who may not have had a very, very severe infection that brought them into the ICU acutely. But then I had maybe some of my first patients come to me in my outpatient pulmonary clinic in June, maybe July, and started meeting people who had symptoms that were pretty nonspecific at times, and so you didn't know quite what to make of it. Individuals with maybe some chest pain, some of the brain fog element to things where they just can't focus as much and they weren't sure what to do with that, what to make of that. And then as you saw more of those cases start to roll in, you start to see more patterns. And so I think maybe the first couple of patients who retrospectively I see now were long haul COVID individuals very early on, some of those individuals you just said, well, just give it more time. And then you see them back in clinic and you give them more time, and then you see this all kind of snowballing. And so as that evolved, we started to know that there was going to be a need for this kind of a comprehensive care for all these individuals. So if you consider right now that there is no FDA-approved therapy for long COVID, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've been trying to understand what we're even treating. So much effort has been to date to try and understand what long COVID is and what's afflicting so many people. So the emphasis now that we have more of that understood is how we can better prevent and treat this with clinical trials. If COVID-19 can do this and we can expect more variants in the future, we shouldn't anticipate that long COVID and similar types of illnesses will go away so quickly. So if COVID-19 was just nature's warning shot for a virus that could do this and more, we need to be prepared for that with our research and tools for the future.
Is it my turn?
Laura's story took a further turn after she was diagnosed with COVID for a second time.
This time around, I got scared again. I felt like every time I get sick, it's gonna be like last year. I was back to my nebulizer treatments, more inhalers, medication. This last inhaler I've been taking since probably September of last year has finally been, I finally feel much better with it. It is an inhaler that has another steroid in it, so they said that it could lead to other side effects, but being able to take that puff in the morning, I now feel that I can push myself a little more not to do that next inhaler the next 4 hours. It's almost like my day's starting off better. I think probably my biggest frustration is people not understanding or choosing to understand that illnesses impact people differently, even if there's a lot of unknown to it. We're struggling from an illness, no matter what it is. We're trying to get better, but you know what? We're struggling, and we need answers, and we need people to help us.
I'm just gonna block your free space.
A lot of patients will be sort of bounced back and forth between doctors being told to just give it more time, or in the worst case scenario, it's all in your head. Despite really all the attention that long COVID has gotten, that's kind of a phrase that's been said to many individuals who we see. Then we're able to give them a sense, I suppose, of relief, that they are being heard, that there's a name for what they have, and that there's hope for the future.
3 years after the start of the pandemic, some 16 million Americans have long COVID. An estimated 4 million people say long COVID has significantly reduced their ability to carry out day-to-day activities. For many of them, that includes their jobs.
De Miami me encantan sus colores, sus atardeceres. La gente, o sea, es una ciudad multicultural. Mi nombre es Diana Chacón, soy actriz y resido en la ciudad de Miami. Comienzos de agosto estaba asintomática, me aplico la segunda dosis y resulta que empiezo a tener síntomas de fiebre, escalofríos, dolor muscular. Los síntomas se fueron acentuando, termino en un urgent care y allí tenía bronconeumonía. Sigo el protocolo, pero resulta que sigo empeorando. Ya allí toman la decisión de trasladarme al hospital. Yo creo que ahí fue como un antes y un después, porque mi vida cambió radicalmente. Ya empecé a perder totalmente la movilidad. Mi mamá llama al neurólogo nuevamente y le dice, oye, mira, mi hija no la veo bien, tú le diste de alta, yo necesito que la veas porque ya no está dejando de sentir las piernas. El médico me recibe como una consulta médica y él dice como que mira, esto es nuevo para la ciencia. Para mis padres obviamente eso fue bastante fuerte, que imagínate tú, oye, no tenemos respuesta, esto es nuevo para la ciencia, llévala para la casa y toma nota. Tiene la muñeca de mi corazón, sí, mi amor, sí. No, stay here. Mona es una perrita que adopté, comencé siendo foster parent, ella es mi emotional support, ha sido indispensable. Porque antes yo no podía quizás agacharme con facilidad, ya con ella, estando 24 horas, ella me hace agacharme, sentarme. Ella lo que hace es como aliviarme esa ansiedad.
Sí, mi amor, sí. Nos vamos. Vamos.
Sientes que te vas a desmayar, sientes que te falta el oxígeno, pero el que ella esté encima y obviamente como en alerta de, oye, mira, tranquila, con su patica, y yo, ok, simplemente acariciándola, hace que ese nivel de estrés, ese nivel de pánico vaya cesando.
The disease takes a toll on every member of the household.
Mis hijos me dicen, mami, lloramos en silencio porque queríamos a nuestra mamá, nosotros acostumbramos a salir, a hacer actividades al aire libre y les tocó en ese tiempo independizarse. Good girl. Me siento en este momento quizás inútil porque no puedo llevarlos al parque, no puedo llevarlos al cine. Pero yo les enseñé a ellos, ok, este sentimiento que ustedes están viendo, esto tiene fecha de vencimiento, un día. Entonces, puedo llorar un día, puedo estar triste un día, pero al día siguiente, ok, seguimos adelante.
Agri, ajá.
Me dice, mami, ¿por qué siempre estás con una sonrisa en la cara? Y tú nos demuestras que sí se puede. Entonces, si tú nos dices que sí se puede y veo que tú tienes ganas de caminar, de que tienes ganas de no quedarte llorando en una cama. Oye, mami, yo tengo que estudiar, yo tengo que hacer mis cosas.
I love my dad's cooking mostly. No, like it's so, I don't know, because he makes eggs and I like the yolk in it. And I always like it when it's liquidy and he always makes it perfect. Like, to the point, right, Mona?
It's
true.
Well, unfortunately, right now, there's no definitive treatment for long COVID. We can treat some of the symptoms. You can give them the medications against the antibodies, but the most important is trying to find treatments for the people who are suffering now. You know, treatments other than addressing the symptoms.
According to the CDC, a range of symptoms still linger in nearly 1 in 5 American adults. Those symptoms are debilitating, painful, and life-altering.
There are people that understand what is going on with people like me and others, but there's other people that completely deny it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're doing this for, like, you're here for attention.
Pretty empty-handed when it comes to treatments for this specifically. Part of that might be because for everyone it's a little bit different. Someone who has a cough in one setting might be brain fog for another person, although they both had a very similar illness with the acute COVID and maybe a fever at the time, a little malaise, but now they're dealing with very different symptoms. So treatment is still very much the holy grail of what we're doing. And to date, there's no randomized clinical trial, which is the gold standard for defining a treatment to help with this.
It hasn't happened recently. And that was around the time that I had the MRI. Once I started with the pulmonologist and the neurologist is when I started to see improvements. They jumped on it right away. They've been very proactive. Speech and occupational therapy, a lot of it is not necessarily fixing the problem per se. A lot of it is just how do I work around it until I see more improvements.
It's a little more organized like this.
Further research is definitely needed. I think we have to have some very serious conversations though about it. There is a lot of denial about what is going on. There's a lot of denial that COVID is still around. We have to admit that this is not going away. COVID itself is not going away. Long COVID is not going away. Every time I go to the doctor, they're telling me people that were sick 6 months ago are now coming in with long COVID symptoms. Yeah, I've been dealing with it for a long time, but there's a lot more new people that are coming up with this. So there's got to be some very serious conversations about what is going on and how do we do this.
You lost.
Bye, Mom.
Bye.
There she is. Yeah, she came running.
For many long haulers, there are good days and then there are bad ones. It's an exacting routine.
For me to walk from the dog it's a challenge. There's a lot of days that I cannot even get out of bed to walk him in the morning, so my husband has to do it.
Dale, ve a jugar. Go play.
Yes.
Hello.
With this one, we like to go out, and we go out to the restaurants, we go to the grocery store, we go everywhere with him. And now it's like, this weekend I didn't get out of bed. We were talking, and on Sunday I was out of the bed maybe 4 hours in a day. The rest I was in bed. I overdid it during the week, so the weekend it took me a lot to recover.
Yes, go say hi.
Ahorita que venga papadito te sacamos un rato. Today I woke up with zero energy. Some days are better than others. Yesterday I was feeling better. I was able to take the dog out all 3 times. Today, this morning, I couldn't take the dog out. My husband had to do it. And as you can see, I'm short of breath. My energy level is very low. Normally I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work a couple hours. Then I get ready for work, go to work until about 3 in the office, then come back home, rest for a little bit, start working around 4:30 again. So I try to divide the day, but today I couldn't do my 5 to 7 slot. It's gonna be a busy day today, trying to get caught up with those 2 hours. By the time I get home today, it will be a lost evening. Basically, I will be laying in bed all day. So that's where we are right now. It's I joke with my friends that this is like being an alcoholic. You take it one day at a time because you don't know how you're gonna feel. They gave me a temporary parking permit so I can park in the front of the building, because otherwise I was taking Uber because that walk is too much for me. And Uber was getting very expensive. Even it's a very short time. As you can see, the traffic, it's a little bit heavy. And this time of day, they have the surcharges. So it cost me $15, $20 each way to get to work or to get home. So it was getting very expensive. I have to manage my energy. So that makes a difference. So here I can park in the handicap spot, and I try to park in the spot that it's a little bit further out of the door. But one of the things that I try to do is increase my activity level every day, little by little. Even today, I don't think that's gonna happen, but we'll work it out. Okay.
You know, certainly there's a lot of frustration. A lot of, patients feel desperate. They don't know who they can turn to for answers. And unfortunately, sometimes, a lot of the times we cannot give it to them. But that's why, we try to reassure them. But, they're struggling with the ramifications of having this long COVID. And, we get asked our expert opinion by, their employers to see how we feel about accommodations for them at work. And we oftentimes recommend them and suggest that sometimes it's term limited. So, after a while, accommodations may expire or may end. And, but the patient is still, feeling like they cannot go back to work and they cannot engage in their normal work-related responsibilities. And so when that usually happens, there's an increased heightened level of anxiety and frustration because they just don't feel like they can do it, and it's their livelihoods, and that further compounds, their frustration and their sense of, isolation, meaning that, there's nobody really looking out for them, and their employers are not looking out for them either. And so, yeah, it's definitely frustrating.
I entered art through the doors of tattooing. Tattooing was my way in. My art has been very inspired in the city of Miami and the history that it has of graffiti. This one's mine. These two right here are mine. I stop by every couple months to check on them, to make sure they're here. Because people will go over them, That one was the first one I ever made. And it was 2019. It's been 4 years already, and it's still there. And this one I did in 2021, so this one's got about 2 years running. And they're still here, man. It's cool. It's cool that people like them. When people like them, they stay. When people don't like them, they go. So, feels good. These projects, they come out of my pocket. I have to take time off work. I have to buy all the supplies. Now I'm at a good place where I can, I'm doing a little bit better where I can do it more often. And I can take off work a little bit more often. So I actually started scheduling about 2-3 days out of the month where I'm gonna be able to come out here and do something. This whole COVID situation has affected everybody in a very different way. There's people that I know that have lost family members. There's people like myself that are experiencing post-symptoms. It's hard to really attack it from one angle because everybody seems to be individually affected, and there's not a specific way that it's affecting everybody. The way I approach it is I consider myself very lucky because I'm still alive and I'm relatively young. I feel healthy. Try to live a positive, joyful life. Be good to my friends, my family, the people that come in contact with me, and just live every day.
There are patients that are completely misinformed, and that usually means that they're getting their own information from their specific sources or their specific bubble, if you will. And that's where, conspiracy theories arise and so forth. I've experienced this all throughout the pandemic, even in the hospital setting where patients can be severely ill with respiratory failure from COVID, pneumonia, for example. And I've seen patients in my office that have survived a COVID-19 infection, and you tell them, this is what you have, this is what we have to do, I would recommend that in order to prevent, new infections, you need to get vaccinated, and they just don't believe it. Unfortunately, a lot of their political kind of inclinations and leanings kind of prevent them to accept the truth. And so that's where my role comes in as well. You try to inform them, you try to teach them to a certain degree. Fortunately, some of these patients do end up being more informed, and then they can help us, make the right decisions as well.
Aquí trabajamos en equipo.
Así es, me pasas una tablita para poder picar. Thank you, baby.
Este es mi día a día, porque en la parte de la cocina aún no puedo cortar, trato de colaborar, hacemos como un trabajo en equipo. Él cocina, pica, yo lavo los platos, mis hijos lo colocan en el puesto, en su lugar, y nos ha funcionado trabajar en equipo.
Bueno, me ha tocado aprender muchísimas cosas nuevas en la parte de la cocina. Pude descubrir que tengo unos dotes culinarios bastante acentuados, no los conocía, pero bueno, todo el mundo dice que cocina bastante sabroso, algo nuevo totalmente para mí, considerando que antes nada más que hacía un sándwich, que hacía unos huevos, o sea, lo básico.
Entonces vamos a comenzar mi proceso de recuperación. Inicialmente las terapias físicas, que al día de hoy siguen siendo fundamental, pasado a la neuropsicóloga. Estoy con una neuropsicóloga, la cual hacemos terapias de escritura, a mí me temblaba la mano, caligrafía, o sea, desde lo más básico, lectura, comprensión de lectura, idea principal. De eso se basa como la parte del lenguaje. Y el tema de la alimentación, que también ha sido fundamental en todo este proceso. Siento que implementando cosas naturales, siguiendo por supuesto en chequeos con mis especialistas, he podido ver más avance. ¿Avance en qué sentido? Más movilidad. Pude hacer un medio maratón, el medio maratón de Miami. Esta es mi mano mágica. Ella me ayuda a agarrar, honestamente, las cosas que no alcanzo. Por ejemplo, mi medicina, que es para la tiroides. Y chan chan. Y la vuelvo y la coloco en su puesto. Ay, a veces pasa eso. Pero bueno, lo arregla Brian. Si necesito, por ejemplo, ayuda para lo que es la secadora, necesito que alguien me colabore y me presione los botones, pero por lo menos la lavadora sí logro yo hacerlo. Y me preguntan, ¿cómo Diana barre? ¿Cómo Diana barre? Ya les muestro. Diana barre y aspira. Trato de no limitarme. Entonces, si por ejemplo comienzo de aquí para allá, nada, es un poco difícil, me ayuda con el tema de balance para no irme a los lados, me fatigo y descanso, pero voy como hasta cierto punto, mejoró un poco para mantener como el balance. Antes quizás este tema de limpieza era como que contratar a alguien, pero obviamente tenemos prioridades, como por ejemplo pagar un bill de médico. Entonces bueno, ahora lo hago yo y nada, es un ejercicio para mí. Ya tengo experiencia. Este proceso de lo que fue el medio maratón me cambió la manera de ver la vida. Definitivamente los límites están en la mente, todo lo podemos hacer. Sé que voy a caminar, pero trato de ser en vez de una víctima, sentirme víctima, que por supuesto soy una víctima de todo lo que está pasando, del long COVID, pero trato de ser un aprendiz. Entonces, eso me ayuda a ver las cosas desde otra manera.
Claro, yo sé que esto está, pero si ven la primera vez que lo hice, ay, ya va.
Es muy bonito en medio del caos ver las cosas positivas. Sin embargo, siempre alzando la voz de decir, oye, estamos aquí, estamos pasando por esta situación y necesitamos ser escuchados.
Tengo más fuerza.
You know, obviously, long COVID, there's many things that we don't quite understand, but we're learning every day more and more, and there are many studies that are ongoing. So the way I address this with patients is that, you know, I tell them in the vast majority of the patients, even with long COVID, it does get better with time. Spontaneously, even if you don't start any therapy, the vast majority of the patients do improve. Maybe they don't improve completely to the way they were before, but they can improve to a point where their symptoms are tolerable or manageable. And so I empathize a lot with my patients and try to be reassuring.
For families struggling with long COVID, the fight against the virus is never ending.
The most important thing I've gotten out of this is to do some better self-care for your mind and stay positive and just continue to do good things for yourself, and hopefully with time things just get better, and that there are many of us in the world, all over the world, that are suffering together, and know it's okay to share your story and your journey.
I do read stories about long COVID patients that do return to normal, and there's part of me that says, okay, it is gonna happen for him. It's just maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's gonna happen. So I am very hopeful.
No matter the circumstance, they manage to find hope at every turn.
There's the light at the end of the tunnel, for me at least. I can't speak for everyone, but there is for me. Don't know if it's gonna last forever, but you know, I'm at least at peace if it is. So if it's something that doesn't go away, I'll manage. It's not the end of my life. So it's not the end of the road. It's something that you can work through, but you have to be really determined and really want to work through it.